Howdy folks, this is a video on how to use the extrude feature or effect. It's a 3D effect. It's right here, extrude and bevel. You'll notice I focus on extruding because I don't really use beveling that often, but first thing you want to do is type something out. Like you can do this to a box, but it's a lot more impactful if you type something out, and normally I use this for titles. So in this case, I'll type out the word extrude in all caps, and then I'll find a big fat font to work with. You want something big and fat. I'm going to use Futura Extra Bold, which I got through my Adobe account. You can get it too. You can get all the different members of that family if you want, but you could also use Impact if you're not feeling like messing with that. So here we go. What happens when we extrude something? Well, let's first off, I'm going to change the color to red or some other mid-tone color, not black, because, well, you'll understand in a minute. Basically, this is an effect that we didn't talk about the other week. It's called 3D Extrude and Bevel, and as soon as you do it, how cool is that, right? It immediately shows you a nice little extrusion. And there's this dialog box is what I want to focus on today, what's happening here. So let's start working our way through it. First off, there's a whole bunch of custom rotations right at the top, so you can show the very front, and that seems useless, but it's really not. I'll explain why in a minute. And then a bunch of off-axis stuff. I'm not going to show all these. It'll take forever. But let's say that you did want to set it to the front. Why would that be handy? Well, the reason is you can actually grab this little box and you can just move it up, and you can do your own custom rotation. But see how that I'm at 16 degrees, 3 degrees, 1 degree. I didn't really want that. So if I set this to the front, if I really just wanted it to rotate up, I'll click my cursor inside of this box and press the up arrow, and then I can just rotate this thing up, which I find handy. So you can control these with the arrow, or you can type something in. But, I think that's nice. Other thing that's kind of cool is you can actually warp the perspective. So this guy right here, you can adjust the perspective. Just like that. Notice how this is starting to look weird. That's because the 3D tool in here kind of stinks. Honestly. I got a computer with a pretty powerful graphics card and RAM, blah 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 blah, and that doesn't seem to be the issue. It's just literally the software. The other thing you can do, so you can rotate the perspective, and hopefully it doesn't flake out too much on you. It makes it look like you're looking at it through a fisheye lens, which I think is cool. You can also take the Extrude Depth, which is set to 50 right here, and push it out like that. You're still seeing some problems the way this looks. That's because that's a flaw in the software. That's all I can tell you. I'm not going to defend anybody. It's just a flaw in the software. So I extruded that. I got the perspective warped to 50%. Like I said, there's no good reason that this should look this way. If I try some other different rotations, strangely, sometimes they'll look good, and then sometimes they won't. It's just, there's no rhyme or reason to it, honestly. But these presets seem to behave better than if you do a custom extrusion like I did from the front. So if I wanted to show the front, it rotated up. It gave me some hassle, as you can see. How did my perspective get changed? Okay, great. Well, whatever. I'll leave the perspective off because apparently this can't handle it. All right. That much said, here's the bevels, and I hate the bevels, honestly. I don't even suggest you touch them, but what do? It actually takes the extrusion itself, the part that makes this 3D, because X and Y axes are what give you that flat look. And when you add the Z in, it starts to protrude off the page as different axes, and that's what's added here. So this takes that area that's being extruded and bevels it. See the bevel being applied here? Lots of weird bevels, and never ever use them. Maybe someday I'll take this back and I'll have to apologize, but it's been years and years. just seems to make the program act poorly. This 3D tool has been around for literally 10 or 15 years, and they've never updated it, and I feel like it never worked that great. But there are uses for it, so even though I'm bashing it, I'm going to keep teaching it. The shading, this is set to plastic, and you can also do diffuse and no shading and all this other stuff. By the way, you have to have preview checked to see any of this, so I probably should have led with that. Sorry about that, but I didn't. So if you're like, I didn't understand the whole time, yeah, it's my fault. I have no idea why there's a warning right here. Bevel self intersection may have occurred. All right, that's a new problem right there. Well, this just is going to show you different types of shading, and you can't even tell how the shading works without pressing on the More Options button. And check this out. This is how you can tell the shading, because there's a light. That's what makes something 3D. You can actually move the light source around. So this is a light, and you can control each light. You can control the intensity, the ambient light, the highlight intensity, the highlight size, the blend steps, and the shading color, which is set to black on each light. By default, you get one light, but if you want to add more, all you have to do is click this button here to add a new light, and you can control that light as well. So you could create a fun little light source, and you can control that. And as you start to get creative with the light sources, you'll see more of the plasticky look that I'm getting with plastic shading. You'll start to understand it a little bit more. But if I go to diffuse shading, it's just softer shading, and no shading, and it's that, and wireframe, and it's that. Wireframe I rarely use, except maybe if I'm trying to create some type of effect. But it is kind of cool, because you can actually expand that, and that's what it looks like upon a series of lines. But here's plastic, and if you want to delete any of these, you can just select them, make sure they're highlighted, and then press the little delete button, and that'll get rid of them. So you can add them, delete them. You can also turn them into what's called backlights. So if you select the light and press the backlight button, or move selected light to the back of object, it moves back there, it turns into a black light. It's supposed to create somewhat of a rim light. Again, this is something that it's never really seemed to work right for me. I sound like a real negative person, but I'm just not a huge fan of how this works. Ambient light will just light up everything. See that? Which is kind of cool. Highlight size is highlight size. I mean, basically, you can just repeat. You can just look and see what these do. I don't need to demonstrate all of them. Blend steps is the gradient. It's actually talking about the gradient. So if you took it down and you were like, I don't want any blend steps, that's going to look interesting, because it's going to start to look kind of like a blend with very few steps in it. So I'll take it down some low level, and you should be able to start seeing that over here. And I am seeing it. I don't know if you see it or not, but if I move the lights around, you'll probably see it even better. But it's definitely having a strong impact on the way this looks. And if I take the blend steps up, it looks way smoother. Look like that's super smooth. It just takes up a lot of RAM when you do that. And of course, the shadows are black on this, but if you wanted a different color, you could. I never ever use this, ever. I just stick with black, because why would I want blue shadows or something like that? So it's always black. Then you've got at the very bottom here what's called map art, which is going to be in a whole nother video. But this dialog box is what you're going to use for all of the extrusions. And, well, for the extrusion and for the other 3D effects, mapping, and the other one, which is revolving. But it's another box, but it still has all the same shading features. So you guys know how to shade now. So basically, you're just supposed to make one of these for the homework assignment for this week. This is the first part of it. And if it looks funky, don't get too upset. Realize it happened to me too. One thing I want to show you, I just pressed OK here. It's great. I mean, you could type something else, right? Like you could type the word cat, right? There it is. The word cat, in case you love cats. I've typed the word cat, and I can resize it, all this other stuff. Another thing to notice, that if I were to highlight this text right? If I highlight it, and if I add a dark stroke to it, like let's say I added a black stroke, it'll actually add that stroke. See? There it is. Well, they added a white stroke, but I wanted a black stroke. It'll actually add that. And black's not going to have any reflective qualities because it's black, so that's if you want to see any of the shading, you'll have to change it. But that's pretty cool. You know, I like that. And at any point, if you like this thing and you want to turn it into a regular old shape, you can go to Object and Expand Appearance, and there it is. It's a regular old shape that you can work with. And sometimes what I do is I cut this stuff apart. I'll take the front, press Control X, actually press Control C to copy it. Select everything, and I'll ungroup it. Then I'll just Alt-click it and turn it into one big old shape. Then press Control F, paste in front, and I've got this one shape, and then these shapes in front. I don't know. It's just something I've done on several posters. I like it. I've used it. Now you know. So there you have it. That is the 3D extrude and bevel tool, and those are my thoughts on it. And that should be enough to help you do your homework. Thanks for listening.